Let's now begin this bulletin by putting the focus on South Korea. Travelers from the US and Europe entering South Korea will now be required to download a government self-quarantine smartphone app, according to the country's Central Disaster Relief Headquarters. The app will remind users to check their symptoms every day and will monitor their locations to confirm if they are following the quarantine order. Those violating quarantine without a proper reason will be immediately reported to authorities. They will then be deported if they are given if they have foreign passports. The police have been authorized to immediately respond to the site when a person leaves their quarantine without authorization. Violating quarantine is punishable by up to 1 year in prison or a fine of up to nearly $8,000. This comes as South Korea reported 100 new cases in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 9,137. Bruce Harrison is now joining us live from Seoul to give us more insights. Hi, Bruce. Thank you for joining us. So tell us a bit about the situation on ground in South Korea. There has been a slow increase, it seems, in the new infections. So what measures is the government taking to curb the infections from rising further?
Priyanka, you mentioned the stricter quarantine measures for people coming from the United States and Europe. That's a direct reflection of the uptick in new infections we're seeing here, because those 100 new cases, roughly 50%, are what are called imported cases of coronavirus. These are travelers from abroad. Those aren't necessarily all people coming from the United States or from Europe, and it could be Korean passport holders or any traveler that's entering the country, but we're seeing a rise in those numbers compared to local transmissions, locally transmitted cases of the virus. South Korea wants to keep it that way. They want to keep those local transmissions low, so they're cracking down really now at the borders. And you mentioned an app. So basically, there's 4 different symptoms you can check off on this smartphone app. I had it myself when I came back from Hong Kong last month, though I was not required to abide by any GPS tracking. That's a new level of security South Korea has put in place to try and make sure this virus doesn't spread further. By and large, Seoulites are being cautious, but we're not under a shelter-in-place order here. You can still travel freely, though the government is urging caution, hygiene, and as well as social distancing for the time being.
Right. So, Bruce, reports also suggest that other countries, including the US, in fact, are reaching out to South Korea because of its somewhat successful methods to curb this deadly virus, for instance, using the tech like an app like this. So is South Korea providing any expertise to other countries in tackling this outbreak?
We're learning about several countries now that are accepting orders for test kits from South Korean manufacturers as well as masks. South Korea got a jump on a lot of countries early in the outbreak. As early as January, South Korean medical companies were beginning to produce these tests and stockpile them in anticipation of an outbreak. So they have the ability to produce a lot, and they had a lot at the start, and that's why they were able to test so many people here. But it's going to come down, Priyanka, to supply and demand here. If Korea needs to continue testing at a very rapid rate, and they want to maintain that ability, that will limit the number of exports they can have at this time. The United States, for instance, has requested a significant number of test kits. President Donald Trump spoke on the phone with South Korea's president to personally ask for that medical equipment. The two countries appear to be fast-tracking that, so I do believe the U.S. will be getting some of that assistance shortly.
Right. Bruce, I think there are 2 terms right now that are circling social media. One, of course, is social distancing. The other is flattening the curve. Now, have reports suggested that South Korea has been successful in testing and, of course, flattening the curve? We here in India are also trying to hope that we also flatten the curve soon. So what is the true picture in South Korea? Has the curve been flattened?
Yes, so far so good. I mean, the numbers are incredible compared to a lot of countries with significant outbreaks. As South Korea gets closer to 9,500 confirmed cases, you would assume there are more deaths, but the mortality rate is quite low. It has creeped above 1%, but South Korea attributes its success in flattening the curve to contact tracing, I should say. So once someone tests positive, the authorities use a massive database of technology and other information gathering tools to find out who these people have been in contact with and where else they've been. And I believe that step in their overall strategy in fighting COVID-19 has been probably the most crucial in preventing more cluster infections throughout the country. But South Korea has an incredible amount of technology and medical infrastructure, including their public health care system, that's enabled them to do this. Not all countries have that infrastructure. So in the short term, for some places, it may be more practical to enforce lockdowns, something South Korea hasn't done, or enforce shelter-in-place orders, something South Korea also hasn't done.